Yeah. I have Proton. Okay. Hope you've all enjoyed your extended break. But because we had that longer break, that means there's absolutely no excuse not to start back on time. So to this next session, we've got 4 talks, and the first is being presented by Jan Hjelmager. He is a long-time supporter of TC211 from Denmark. He comes from the Danish Agency for Climate Data, and he's going to present to us on implementation of metadata based on standards. Jan.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, or well, wherever you are in the world. Well, I'm going to talk about implementation of metadata based on standards. However, it is only the case because we are also an agency that based much of our work on standards. I'll come back to that. But if you might wondering why it's called Agency for Climate Data, because my agency is also doing topographic mapping and distribution of data. It's a political decision. We have to be modern and comply to how the politics works. Anyway, what I'm trying to cover these next 20 minutes or so, first of all, I give it a short introduction to the agency, and then I'll give an introduction to our metadata solution, and also how do we handle internal, historical, and external metadata. And with that, I think the 20 minutes is gone. First of all, the Agency for Climate Data is a agency that creates and develops digital solution where we distribute all types of public data to the Danish society as such, and rely on stakeholders and partners to develop our system. And it also contains, of course, a quite big support for the climate adaptation in Denmark. At the moment, we are 270 employees, and we are located in Denmark, Copenhagen. And fairly recently, we moved to our new premises. You can see on the right side of the screen, where we share the building with the Danish Meteorological Institute, as well as Danish Statistical Bureau. So the aim is to have some kind of cooperation with these agencies, so we perhaps can deliver even better solutions in the future. The agency, as I mentioned, we develop digital maps, and we are very data-driven, and we also are in charge of the Danish infrastructure for geospatial information. And in order to achieve these goals and these ambitions, we of course have to focus on how we impact. How do we impact the community, the Danish society as such? And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we had some collaboration with partners and stakeholders to get into the goal line. And since I'm here, we also have a certain amount of international outlook. Also have colleagues other colleagues attending this week, and also attending ODC meetings and Inspire, etc., and try to attend conferences. So we try to have a certain amount of international outlook. Now to our solution. Well, much of our work in our agency is based upon standards developed by ISO TC211 and ODC, and our distribution services, which are quite heavily used. We have more than 1 billion hits a month for all types of data distributed, are based on ODC service and ISO TC211 standards. So I think we are very well founded in standardization work. as well as we also have developed a solution similar to the solution we have, standards guide, that we have ISO, OGC, and IHO have been developed for distributing standards related information to UN GIF. We've done that in Danish, so we encourage Danish municipalities, counties, companies to use standards, and then we describe them in Danish and with reference to where they can find them. But we now have a little test case, or not a test case, a case story that our metadata system we have been developing, and there was a need for that because the old version of our metadata system, geodatainfo.dk, a name that we have been using for several generations of distributed metadata, was in a need for a strong need, I should say, for a modernization. But we also had some requirements that we need to fulfill to get that new system up and running. And we have to fulfill Inspire requirements. It has to be able to handle internal metadata. It has to be handled metadata for historical data. It has to be vendor independent. And it has to be based on standards, international standards. ISO 19103, ISO 19115 suite of standards, and ISO 19139. And it should also include way of handling quality data. So we also include ISO 19157 suite of standards in the suite of requirements. And well, we looked around in the market and found a solution that is widely used throughout Europe, which is GeoNetwork. As an open source, it's a vendor independent, and it fulfilled all our requirements. So we have a data warehouse where we keep all our data. And from that, we export the metadata into the GeoNetwork solution, which is the master the metadata warehouse, from where we export on location up to our historical maps based on GeoNetwork, and that is distributed through historical.dk. I come back to what that contains. We also distribute it to our general solution, Geodata Info, as I mentioned earlier, which are also exporting both to Inspire, or Inspire metadata port harvest from that solution, and we export to the Danish Agency for Digitization solution called Datavejviseren. They also harvest metadata from there. And then we have our distribution of data, dataforsyning.dk. They have a special special treatment, but we also export to that from the same system. So it all go back to GeoNetwork as our basic solution. Our internal metadata are all our data as such, modeled according to ISO 19103 plus, I must say plus. We have some additional national rules to comply to, in order to have some language issues and other specialities that need to be included. But basically, it's based on ISO 19103. That was also why we had some interest in being the project lead of the update of that standard some years ago. Our metadata has been modeled according to the ISO 19115 and 19157 suite of standards. So again, we can cope with everything. And in altogether, we have 245 data set, products, services, and maps in our data warehouse. And our data warehouse is an Oracle database, and it exported up to a never mind, another database. And for our internal metadata, we had some special element that we need to incorporate, because given that we are a public agency, we also have to be able to submit data to the Danish National Archive. And that's a rule, a law. So we also have to mark in our database how to handle that, when it's handled, what the status of that. And given that some of our data are very critical for the Danish society, we also have to have a marking for that. And we have 3 levels of criticality. And then last but not least, you also have to make a link, a pointer, something where you can say, okay, you have this data set, but you have another similar data set, so that you can, when you have one data set, you can see, okay, if I change this one, it might affect that one and that one and that one, in order to make a consistent distribution of data and handling of data. Our historical maps that's actually the latest metadata solution we have been developed, because we are exposing all our historical maps, auto photos, and land administration protocols. Of course, you could say they should belong to the Danish National Archive. Yes, but we have a lot of professionals, amateurs, ordinary people that would like to look into these kind of things because they would look back into their heritage. So it has been decided that we should develop a solution, and that is also based on the same rules as we have our data warehouse, we have our ISO 19103 model and national rules, and we have the 115, 157 compliance and modeling. But given that we are talking about historical data, sometimes all the data, if you should be strict on the standards, cannot be filled in according to the cardinalities. So we have also been given ourselves some artistic freedoms to handle these issues, because otherwise we couldn't do that. For example, you might have only, perhaps this map was produced around this time of the century. We might not know it more, and sometimes we don't have the coordinates. We have to look into where can it approximately be. So there's some artistic freedom done on that. Then we have all our external metadata. It has to be compliant with INSPIRE, the Infrastructure for Spatial Information in Europe, which is a directive released in 2007. And it requires that we provide metadata on discovery level based on ISO 19115 from 2003 and 139 from 2007. So you could say that is quite old standard we are using there, but that's a law in Europe. Of course, our new system also is based on a newer version, so we have to do some mapping. But still, we have to be able to fulfill the INSPIRE requirements. And given that we also INSPIRE national point of contact, it put even more pressure on us to do that. So geodata info, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, it is actually a little bit more than INSPIRE metadata. It is also all other types of data, and even private can have data in metadata in geodata info if they would fulfill the requirements to allow everybody to access. We cannot put restriction on accessing metadata in the system. And for the external metadata, as I mentioned when I gave the description of the architecture, we export to the solution that the Danish digital government agency are having, because all public organizations in Denmark are obliged to have data in their solution, which is called Data Vejviseren. It's a CCAN solution, and they have more than 3,264 data sets in there from all types of organizations. It's a CCAN, and they are housed from geodata info. So we have done a mapping from ISO 19115 to DCAT. So that's why we actually also very supportive of ISO TC211, trying to develop a, I should say, normative mapping, so we can actually go to the Danish Agency for Digital Government and say, okay, here we have a normative mapping. So this is how we're going to do in the future, and hope they will agree with us upon that. And then we have our data forsyning, which is a Danish distribution platform, where we distribute all types of public data, and they are all standards-based. They are all modeled according to 19103 and the national rules, and it's harvested from our internal metadata system, and it's transformed to comply to the requirements the data forsyning.dk have. And it also have a little extra elements, because we also have to add metadata to use cases to the metadata. And again, here we have done a little bit tweaking to get that, but we have managed to do that. So we have a solution where we can distribute data. And I perhaps should, I don't know, I mentioned before, but this data forsyning.dk is, but that's what the platform I said meant. I was distributing more than 1 billion data hits a month, which in Danish, according to Danish measurement and scale, it's quite a big number. So that's how we are implementing, and we are working steadily on developing metadata, using metadata, and being supportive of TC211's metadata work. And we might also be looking forward to actually to use the JSON encoding, because there might be issues where we can use that as well in the future. But then again, time will show how our solution will, and requirements from the society as such in Denmark will evolve over time. With that, I'll say thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jan. That was brilliant. You can see there from Jan's slides, handling metadata is still quite a complex business, and how standards can help you do so. So the question I have for you, Jan, is mentioned right at the start of the legacy system, and you've moved over to Tube Network to handle those 3 different types of metadata. So roughly how long did that effort take your organisation to scale?
It took roughly, from when we started doing that, 2.5 years. And the last part is actually doing the historical data. Tweaking here and there.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions for Jan? So, yeah, there's a question here.
So, thank you very much for the report. I have just want to ask, is there some efficiency way to transform the metadata 19152 to 19115-1?
Well, I must confess that we are handling, we are mixing the standards, looking at how the classes can incorporate, and so it's a little bit tricky.
So how about your network? Can your network transform this one?
It can that. It can handle the entire suite of standards. The newest version, as I said, is heavily used throughout Europe, at least among the EU members. So, yeah, I think at least when we had to make a choice, find a solution, it was the best choice we could find on the market, unless we have to develop something on our own, which was not an option at all. And we don't want to go with a vendor-dependent solution. It has to be vendor-independent, so somehow open source.
Okay. Good question.
Hi, great presentation. I think I'm going to speak something that Chris would like to have done. So, what was your investment going to developing this, and do you have any numbers to say how much of the return you have, like ROI? So, you get the 2 part of the question.
Well, yes, thank you very much for the question. I don't know how much money was spent. because it was just something we had to do, no question asked. The old system did not fulfill it also was having to be a network, but anyway, the old system didn't fulfill the IT security requirements, so we had to do it. And how much return of investment? No. Again, it's something we have to do. We have to do something for Inspire. We have to do something else. So why not bundle it all together? We have to handle our metadata in an efficient way. So I can't give you any number of how much we invested and how much return we invested. My guess is that, well, something we have to do.
Thank you very much. We in the UK we use GeoNetwork as well. It is a very flexible package in that sense. So yeah, thank you very much.